r/ProRevenge. Today's first post is entitled, "Trick me out of my laptop, you'll give me your car." 13 years ago, I was in my late teens living on my own and really struggling to live financially. One of the few possessions I had was an old laptop. My laptop had stopped working properly, and while I'm fairly proficient in using a computer, I had no idea about fixing them. I did a bit of searching on the internet but couldn't get it working, so I asked my stepdad to take a look. He has a quick look and says, "It's screwed." But he'll take it off my hands if I don't want it, so I said, sure. If it's broken, then it's no good to me. 10 minutes later, I walk in the room and he's using it. I asked if he fixed it and he says, "Yep, thanks for the laptop." I was so obviously angry. My mum says she wasn't getting involved and his only response was that he did a quick internet search to find the fix and I could have done the same thing. I was broke and he took one of my only possessions even though he had a PC and a laptop already. A few months later, I was visiting my mum and stepdad when I had an idea. While I'm useless with computers, I'm very competent with mechanics, specifically Audis. And my stepdad had a 2001 Audi 3. Before coming in the house, I went under his car and unplugged the oil level sensor and a vac line for the turbo. Later on that day, he went to go to the shop or something. When he started the car, it threw up oil warning lights on the dash and wouldn't boost, so he turned it off and had a look of concern on his face. I went out to ask him, "What's up?" and he said that something had gone majorly wrong. He says something along the lines of catastrophic turbo failure or engine failure. He's already spent quite a bit on repairs and didn't want to spend any more money on it, so spoke to my mum about just cutting his losses and scrapping it. I asked, "How much is it worth at the scrapyard?" and he says, £100, so I ever so graciously offer £120 to take it off his hands and to maybe part it out, which he accepts. He signed over the logbook and title and wrote me a receipt of purchase and handed the keys over. I walked outside, lifted the bonnet and pretended to look at my phone for a minute. I went under the car and plugged the vac line and oil sensor back in, fired it straight up and drove around the block. When I got back, I gave him the thumbs up and said, "Hey, it's all fine now." His mouth was wide open and he was mega pissed. And my reply was, "You could have found the solution too with a quick search on the internet." He tried arguing that it wasn't fair, and if it's working, then I can't just take his car. But I said he didn't have a problem tricking me out of my laptop and that he's already signed the car over to me, so tough luck. My mum kind of laughed and she said she's not getting involved and that it was his own fault. I still have the car to this day and it's practically in showroom condition and runs sweet. r/ProRevenge. Entitled, "Ex cheated on me and falsely accused me of rape, so I exposed her to everyone she knew." In late May 2016, I asked my crush Kate of 3 years out on a coffee date. 3 dates later, we made things official. For the next 7 months, our relationship felt too good to be true. We clicked on so many interests, so we hardly ever disagreed on anything. We were very open with each other, which led to an incredible sex life. We both had good jobs, so we had money to spoil one another, and our families were both enthusiastic about our relationship. In January 2017, I was accepted into my country's Armed Forces Reserve program as a combat engineer. I underwent basic training from February to late April, and was up until then the hardest thing I had ever done. There were several times I thought I wouldn't graduate, and the only thing that kept me going was Kate's words of encouragement over texts and calls. She was there when I received my BTC certificate and never let me forget how proud she was of me. As part of my job in the reserves, I would have to go away in the summer for advanced training between early June to late August. Kate fully supported me going 400 kilometers away to the training center and spending almost our entire summer break on work to further my military career. The summer was brutal on me. I was a social outcast from every clique that formed on our course and was the butt of several jokes. My self-esteem plummeted through the floor, but Kate's belief in me was what made me prevail. I passed as 5th best on the course and I owed it all to her. The decline. Things between us started to sour after returning home. According to her, I wasn't as spontaneous and outgoing as before I went away. I was dismissive, took small jabs and jokes as personal insults, and would rather stay in and watch movies and have sex instead of going out. Unbeknownst to both of us, I had developed some nasty social anxiety due to the events of the summer, and it started affecting our relationship. Nearing our 2-year anniversary in 2018, we got into a heated argument over a small misunderstanding and subsequently broke up. I was incredibly distraught before she texted me 3 days later and said she wanted to try and fix things. I didn't see her for 3 weeks, but we kept in touch every day, slowly mending things. When we officially got back together, nothing felt the same. Every time I talked with her, it was as if I was walking on eggshells, and it only worsened my anxiety, which in turn hurt our already damaged relationship. Then things finally came to a head at the end of July. The hurt. While in school, Kate had met a dude named John. She saw in John what she used to see in me, and they quickly became very close friends. He consoled her through our breakup and every time I messed up afterwards. For the record, I knew of John, but never thought Kate would do anything with him. One night after work, we had planned for me to stay the night at Kate's place. I arrived to see the two of them chilling on the living room couch. Kate said that John had dropped by for a spontaneous visit and he was leaving. After John left, she became cold and distant. I slowly accepted that our relationship was dead, and I asked her how things were between us. She echoed my thoughts, and we agreed to break up the next day. She said I could stay the night one last time, seeing how it was late, and she was still worryful of me. From there on, she fell asleep. Kate became uncharacteristically glued to and protective of her phone. In the past, she wouldn't care if I glanced over to catch her and her friends texting about whatever, but now she did her best to hide the screen from me. I asked her about it and she said it was private stuff, which only raised more questions. After she fell asleep, curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked her phone, I knew the passcode, and found hundreds of messages between her and John. Messages about how she was now single, how exciting it was that they could now be a couple in public, and laughing at me about everything I did. I quietly sobbed as I read through each hurtful text. My crying wasn't as quiet as I'd thought. Kate stirred, and once she realized what I was doing, she threw a fit. I couldn't find the anger or words to combat her, so I just grabbed my stuff and left, with Kate shouting and yelling at me the whole time. It was late in the morning when I got home. I just broke down and cried all night. I called in sick from work the next day and spent it sulking in my bed. The day after, I got several angry texts from Kate's friends and family. In a bid to save her image and denounce anything I might say about her, she told anyone she knew that I had forced myself upon her that night in one last attempt to get some before we broke up, and left after the deed was done. She claimed that what I had done was scarring. She refused to press charges because she didn't want to make a circus of her life in court and was bigger than the person by doing so. I spent the next few months in fear that her allegation would have me discharged from the army and my image forever tarnished, but nothing ever happened. The revenge. 5 months afterwards, Kate DM'd me. After pleasantries, she'd basically apologized for the whole thing and actually admitted to faking it, though she would never publicly admit it to save her own reputation. What about my reputation? This angered me, but I kept cool. I screenshot the text and continued talking with her. Over the next 3 months, she entered into a cycle of events as follows. Complain about a current life situation, usually about John screwing up in their relationship in one way or another and asking me for advice. And then, lamenting our relationship, how I never screwed up like John did, and how she wished we could go back to the way things were, blah 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 blah. And then, ignoring me because John finally pulled his head out of his ass, did some huge romantic gesture, and saved their relationship. And then, going on a smear campaign on social media about our relationship, employing her friends for help, knowing in full I would see it all, and trying to bait me into an argument. It would work. She would try to turn the argument around and paint me as the bad guy, and then block me for about a month before repeating this cycle. This happened 3 times like clockwork, and always left me burnt out and broken, but a part of me wanted it to happen. Each time it did, I took screenshots of every damning thing she said. I had a full SD card of everything I compiled before I finally decided it was time. making several picture copies of the worst text messages I caught. I brought several manila envelopes and mailed them to everyone I thought would matter to Kate. Her parents, grandparents, extended family she was super close with, best friends, work, boss, co-workers, teachers, whoever I could find a mailing address for. I made sure that anyone getting the envelope would know that the texts were between me and Kate, and I sent them off. Within 3 weeks, I got results. Some of the people who messaged me to shame and insult me before now apologized for their words. My favorite was from her own parents, who went on to say that they were deeply sorry about their daughter's behavior, how they raised her to be better than how she acted, and to please not pursue any legal actions. I told them I'd think about it and that they'd be the first to know besides Kate if I did. Kate sent me some texts as well with things like, "How could you betray my trust like that?" Or, "You ruined my life, you a-hole." I didn't reply. I just read every angry text that flew in with a satisfied grin, and then blocked her when it stopped. I never fully found out how badly her life was affected by my revenge, but I do know that she dropped out of school and no longer has a job. I hope John was worth it. This next post from r/ProRevenge, entitled, "Teacher verbally abused suicidal classmate. Now everyone knows." This was back in high school when I was 17. I'm currently 20. I was in class for forensics, and this teacher was notorious for making fun of students. I'll call her Butthole Teacher. To put in perspective how much I hate her, I got a pet cockroach and named it after her. In this class, she would have the students take attendance by lining up and answering a question at her desk before going to sit down. This is important for later. It started with things such as making fun of students who weren't in class to hear, poking fun at how they looked, their grades, their clothes, etc. Things slowly escalated as the year progressed to where she would mock my voice in front of everyone whenever I spoke. I also have a very growly voice because I used to get recurring scarlet fever for years, which permanently damaged my vocal cords. At first it was fine. It's not like she was saying anything I'd never heard before from my classmates about each other. But then comes in my classmate who I'll call Small, because she's small. Small was a quiet and very sweet girl. She was funny and always nice to everyone, but she had really bad depression and anorexia. And she would be bullied a lot because her parents weren't the best. She often came to class smelling of her dad's chain smoking and in old hand-me-down clothes. Because Butthole Teacher would only encourage the bullying, Small eventually started cutting and wearing hoodies all the time to hide the cuts. But everyone knew. It got to the point where two people would take advantage of her poor family and pay her to scratch words on her leg or arm in class with a safety pin. Butthole Teacher did nothing at all. And trust me, she knew. Fast forward a few weeks and we all line up as usual. The question was, "What's your favourite type of music?" Me and Small came up. I answer and am heading back to my seat when Small quietly goes, "I don't know. I don't really have one." To which, and I kid you not, Butthole Teacher goes full volume with a smile on her face and says, "Well, what kind of music doesn't make you want to slit your wrists?" At this point, the entire class goes silent. She'd gone too far, and Small immediately runs out of class. Everyone's too shocked to know what to do, so we just move on with class. I still wish I'd gone to check on her. After that, I just could not stand Butthole Teacher. I couldn't stand her existence. I couldn't stand looking at her smiling face. I wanted to rip that smile off. Every time she breathed, I wanted to strangle her. I was so done with this. I began secretly recording every time she made fun of us. I would record entire classes and crop out what I needed. And then, one tiring month later, I emailed them all straight to the principal. Close to half an hour of this Butthole Teacher making fun of everyone, making suicide jokes. I fumed about how inappropriate and unacceptable this was, and I demanded justice. And justice I got. Butthole Teacher didn't show up for a few days. When she came back, she had such a dead look in her eyes. Finally, no more of that goddamn smile. The principal calls us all together, and in front of everyone, her husband, the students, and staff, she was forced to formally apologize for making fun of a suicidal 16-year-old. The look on her husband's face told me all I wanted. After this, I only ever needed to see her smoking alone and hated at the liquor store. The smile never came back. I never told anyone what I did, but everyone just knew, and a sense of overwhelming relief was much happily welcomed in the class. Small started going to therapy and we became pretty good friends. She got the help she needed and she moved out of her family's home with her sister, and she developed healthier coping mechanisms. Suicide is not a joke, and anyone who makes fun of someone even remotely entertaining the idea of suicide, this is what you deserve. To lose your job, lose your friends, lose your reputation, lose your husband, and a kid to name a cockroach after you.